Beloved couple passes away, then cops uncover their hidden life of crime. How well do you really know the people around you? When investigators discovered a peculiar asset in the home of a New Mexico couple, nobody could believe the odd details that emerged. Yet every piece of evidence further confirmed that this well-loved pair had really pulled off one of the biggest crimes New Mexico ever saw. Before we begin, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell for more amazing videos. Rita and Jerry Alter always seemed like regular middle-class Americans. They lived off a modest teacher salary and had lived in Cliff, New Mexico since the late 1790s. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. Jerry loved an adventure, art, and traveling. In fact, he'd written and self-published several books about his experiences in over 140 different countries. Certainly not the type of guy you'd take for a crook. His beloved wife Rita was a beacon of kindness, patience, and positivity. She was working as a speech pathologist in the public school system, and she was always there to support Jerry in everything he undertook. Despite their friendly demeanor, the Alters kept to themselves. Their neighbors reported that they were a lovely couple, but hard to really know, which explains how they were able to keep a secret for decades. Sadly, Jerry passed away of old age in 2011, with Rita passing away 5 years later. They left behind their fully grown children, Barbara and Joseph, as well as their favorite nephew, Ron Roseman. Because Ron lived closer to the Cliff home than Barbara or Joseph, he was left in charge of the Alters' estate and assets. He ended up putting their home up for sale and inviting antique dealers to assess their possessions. One of these art dealers was David Van Ochre from Silver City, who walked through the Alters' home and quickly found himself drawn to one particular piece of art. The painting was a mid-20th century painting featuring an abstract interpretation of a nude woman which hung in the master bedroom away from any prying eyes. Unable to let the painting go and afraid that somebody else might snatch it up, Van Ochre bid $2,000 for all the estate's assets. It wasn't as much as Ron had hoped for, but he was happy to finish up the transactions. As soon as Van Ochre returned to Silver City, the painting kept intruding on his thoughts. He just knew that he had something special in his car and was determined to find out what it was. Luckily for him, Silver City is an unusually large population of local and revered artists, many of which often went to Van Ochre's antique store to add to their own collections. A few days after Van Ochre placed the abstract on display in his store, an artist with a sharp eye dropped in and immediately recognized the piece as a work of a very famous artist. "That's a William de Kooning," he explained. De Kooning was a Dutch expressionist who moved to the United States in the 1960s and became the highest-paid Dutch painter of all time. De Kooning's works have ranged in price anywhere from tens of millions to hundreds of millions. So Van Ochre immediately knew that if this was truly his work, he'd be sitting on a gold mine. At first, he refused to believe it was true. There was no way that he'd just stumbled upon a painting of that kind of historical and monetary value in the home of a school teacher in a small town in New Mexico, right? Still, it was only natural for Van Ochre to secretly hope that it was true. And as more and more customers pointed out the resemblances to de Kooning's works, he had to stop wondering and find out once and for all. When he began to research the painter properly, the art dealer couldn't believe his eyes. After hours of surfing the web, he'd found an article about the Arizona Museum of Art that also mentioned the painting. The article mentioned the morning of November 29, 1985, when an unknown couple drove into Tucson, Arizona to visit its biggest, most popular museum. It was still early and the doors weren't even open yet. A local security guard was unlocking the entrance to admit a member of staff to enter the premises when a young man and an older woman approached him and struck up a conversation. While the woman, who appeared to be in her 60s, chit-chatted with the security guard about everything from art to the weather, the young man was able to slip into the building, making a beeline to the third floor. After only a few minutes, the man reappeared by the woman's side, and rather than going into the museum, they made a hasty exit. The fact that they didn't actually stay to visit the museum was highly suspicious to the guard who went to investigate. As it turns out, he was the only security personnel on the grounds at the time, and there were no surveillance cameras. However, it quickly became clear what the mysterious man was after. On the third floor, an incredible painting was missing from its frame. Woman Ochre by William de Kooning. The police found no fingerprints. Their only clue was the rust-colored sports car. no license plate number. Kooning, who died in 1997, was one of the most promising painters of the mid-century abstract expressionist movement. Woman 3, another painting in the same series as W, sold for $137.5 million. Since de Kooning's works remain some of the most marketable art pieces in the world to this day, the mystery of the stolen painting would simply not fly, and yet it remained unsolved for decades. As art dealer Van Ochre read the article about the robbery over and over again, the reality of the situation truly began to dawn on him. He may be in possession of an invaluable, stolen piece of history. That night, he lay awake, holding a gun, ready to protect the painting at all costs. He'd already contacted the museum in Tucson, and the top brass there planned to visit him the next day to investigate. The professionals were truly in disbelief when they first viewed the piece. Soon, de Kooning's signature was analyzed by a handwriting expert, while chemicals were used to determine the age of the painting. Still, the question remained, how did these middle-class folks even come across an art piece that was now worth $160 million? Did they realize its worth, or could they even be the culprits? Over the course of the following months, details surfaced suggesting that the quiet couple were not quite as innocent as they seemed to be. Once the investigation started, certain aspects of their lives just didn't add up. The pair enjoyed an expensive lifestyle of travel and leisure, despite earning their limited income. Even more surprising was the $1 million they had in their savings account by the time they passed. Their amazed but loyal nephew, Ron Roseman, simply believed that his aunt and uncle had made some good investments and were careful with their money. But there was no evidence that could confirm this. Unfortunately for Ron, more incriminating evidence was found. In 2018, a photograph surfaced that confirmed Jerry and Rita were in Tucson for Thanksgiving in 1985, just a day before the museum was robbed. Investigative journalists also found that Jerry Alter drove a similar sports car as was described by the security guard. Also, both of their detailed daily journal entries were empty on the day of the robbery. Many believe that a police sketch bears a striking resemblance to the couple. Some have suggested that the young man was Alter's son Joseph, with a disguised Jerry taking on the role of the female suspect. As if things didn't look bad enough, a short story surfaced that was written by Jerry himself. It was the story of two women who befriended a security guard only to steal an emerald jewel from under an unsuspecting guard's nose. At the end of the story, the woman placed the jewel on display in a spot where only she could see it. This couldn't be a coincidence. It was the story of the de Kooning painting heist in disguise. Even though all the signs pointed to the late Rita and Jerry Alter being guilty of stealing the painting, the evidence was all circumstantial. As of 2021, the case remains open, but there's still plenty of buzz about the possible outcomes. People who knew the Alters doubted they'd do something like that and claimed the police sketches didn't actually look like them. They gave the quiet couple quite the benefit of the doubt. Today, the painting is safely housed at the University of Arizona Museum of Art. Even though it's been quite a while since it was recovered, the institution is still in the process of restoring it after years of neglect. The Alters have escaped justice, if they were guilty at all. Of course, the biggest challenge with stealing art is finding a way to sell it later on. More recently, art owners with questionable credentials have tried to make a buck off famous artwork in a rather stupid fashion. Please share this story with your friends and family.